Welcome to the Power of Hospitality podcast, a place where we discover the stories behind the most iconic luxury brands and influential figures who have shaped the hospitality industry. I'm your host, Jupiter Humphrey-Bishop, and in Series 2, we explore some of the most world-renowned products and legendary careers. From CEOs and visionary entrepreneurs to elegant, award-winning luxury brands served in some of the highest establishments in the luxury hospitality industry. Today, I'm delighted to welcome to the show Eugene Leonard, General Manager at the famous Hotel Café Royal, a hotel with over 160 years of history and memories being made. As a previous General Manager at the Maybourne Beverly Hills, Eugene, who's been named within the top 50 business leaders from Boutique Hotelier's Power List 2025, began his inspirational journey within the luxury hospitality hotel world at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. He then immersed himself across many different roles, from 10 luxury hotels, from director of events, food and beverage director, hotel manager, and general manager roles across top hotels, including Claridge's, the Connaught, the Berkeley, and the Cadogan, and has a wealth of knowledge and passion for the hospitality industry. So welcome, thank you so much for being here today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Why don't we start by introducing yourself and perhaps talk about how you began in the hospitality industry?
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here. Thank you for asking me to come and talk to you.
Fantastic. So why don't you start perhaps by introducing yourself and talking about how your journey began?
Yeah, sure. I'm Eugene Leonard. I'm Irish originally. Started working in hotels and hospitality at the young age of 16, and have had the pleasure of working in several different countries. Worked in Ireland, Switzerland, the UK here, America. I went to a hotel management school in Ireland in Shannon. And now I'm currently here running the Hotel Café Royal. I'm the general manager, very, very proud to be looking after an incredible, iconic hotel of London.
Wow, incredible. And, it sounds like you've got so much passion for the hospitality industry. Perhaps, tell us, how did what sparked that passion of
Where did it come from? Yeah. I think it came from my father. He had a job which actually wasn't in hospitality at all.
Okay.
He worked in the postal service in Ireland.
Okay.
And his job was basically to kind of manage relations between international postal services.
Okay.
So he had this job in the 70s and 80s and the 90s. And so, he would get on a plane and, he wasn't necessarily taking your mail to Japan, but he would go to Japan and ensure that they had the right setup and connections and everything like that. And he did that all over the world, at a time when I think travel was very different to what it is today.
Yeah.
And he would come back with things from all over the place. He went to Russia and Moscow, and he came back with one of those hats, and he went to, like I said, Japan, and he would always come back with hotel things, pens and notepads and envelopes and all that kind of thing. And I think just that sense of like there's a whole world out there, that really kind of is, I think, where I got hooked on the idea of travel. And yeah, it's kind of gone from there, I guess.
Wow. And tell us about what was your first experience working in the industry and what was that like?
Yeah, gosh, this is one that I actually I share at like the induction, the orientation for new starters, because we're all human. Yeah. My first job was at the Hibernian Hotel in Dublin, which I'm not sure it's actually there anymore. It might not be, but and I started in pot wash. I was 16, and I lasted about 2 weeks there.
Okay.
Pot wash is a tough job. You clean a pan, and before you know it, you've given it back to the ship. Before you know it, you're cleaning it again. It's hard work. And I will never forget one day, maybe 2 weeks in, the chef said to me, "Listen, we're all going for a cigarette break. You need to empty the stock out of the stock pot." I thought, okay, great. Here's my I'm not just washing dishes. My first little job, like actually cooking. So I went over, took this stock pot, got this big giant sieve, put the sieve down. They had like a drain in the floor. Put the sieve on the drain, pour this thing in, put all the gubbins back in the pot and put the pot back at where it was. Maybe the chefs come back in and they're like, where's the stock? And I was like, it's in the pot. I'm like, no, where's the liquid? I was like, oh, the liquid's gone down the drain.
Oh, no.
That was the end of me working in the kitchen. I think the hotel owner took sympathy on me and put me in housekeeping. So I was doing turn down then the next week. But that was my first job in housekeeping, in hotels even, and ended up in housekeeping. But, yeah.
And you've had such a wealth of knowledge, of experience. What drove you to keep progressing and keep stepping up in your career? What kind of?
Yeah, I think two things did that for me. One was just like a personal situation, like with family, and my father died when I was young, and he always just asked me to make him proud. So that really spurred me on to try and do well at work, I guess. And then the hotel school that I went to, Shannon, has a brilliant alumni and a brilliant kind of, you see these people that have gone before you and you think, wow, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I could become, the CEO Jamira is an alumni, and people that are absolutely at the very pinnacle of hospitality in the world. So they kind of led the way, I guess. And and the college is very good at instilling a sense of being as good as you can be, and striving to be at the top of the industry. And and I think those two things combined have motivated me. Yeah.
And of course, then you stepped up and you stepped up again, and then you became, kind of this director of events for Maybourne. And for anyone that doesn't know, but Maybourne is a hotel group that includes all these top luxury hotels, including Claridge's. How was that experience? And I'm sure you must have had some very incredible events that you held. Maybe perhaps tell us some about some of those.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely kind of cut my teeth in events, and grew up, I guess, in events, and learned a lot of my F&B background from events. We did all sorts of events, from things like Mulberry fashion shows. One day you'd be doing a Mulberry fashion show, the next day you're doing a Women of the Year awards for Vogue or something like that. And then the next day that you're maybe welcoming royalty, this huge variety of events. But the one that kind of stands, I think, head over shoulders for me above all others was, I actually was at the next level in my career for this particular event, but the Gold Service Scholarship.
Yes.
And the Queen came to Claridge's,
wow.
and as patron, she came to Claridge's and handed out the awards. I think it was 2015, maybe. And what an amazing preparation that was. The just to kind of get this kind of exposure, I guess, to her team and her a little bit, and this sense. I remember somebody said to us, whatever you do, just don't paint. We're like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, wherever she goes, everyone paints beforehand, and they want a place looking as but we just smell paint everywhere we go, and we're like, okay, better not paint. Let's just paint a few weeks before they arrive. So we still painted.
I see.
But it was quite a momentous moment when she arrived at the hotel. Claridge's kind of iconic entrance. You go through that revolving door, up those steps in the foyer, and the afternoon tea was packed. Of course, nobody had a clue who was coming in, but I think very quickly get a sense of who that is. And everyone stood up and walked into the foyer and created this guard of honor and clapped her through. And it was just like, wow, this has all happened, like totally unscripted. At that exact same moment, the elevator came down, and Claridge's has a liftman who operates, so that slides the thing open. And out walks Matt Damon, who happened to be staying in the hotel at the time. And he kind of walks into the lobby, and there's all these people stood cheering and clapping, and and he's like, "Is this for me?" And he literally bumps into the Queen, and we kind of had to walk over and just be like, push him out of the way a little bit, this isn't for you. It was, but that was one of those moments where it's like, only at
Yeah.
Claridge's do think, well, I'm sure it happens in other places, but certainly when you work in a place like that, you just get this sense of like, only in Claridge's do things like that happen, you know,
Wow.
and like that will live with me, I think, till the day I die. You know, memories like that. Yeah.
And I'm sure the planning process behind, you know, creating these events in that role, I'm sure that was, you know, what kind of did that look like? You know, say you've got fashion shows or Vogue coming to you and they're saying, we would love to do this event, you know, kind of what's going through your mind and how do you kind of
absolutely.
organize that?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much logistical planning for these things. You know, I remember once we had the Emperor of Japan came and stayed. That actually featured on one of these BBC documentaries that we filmed, and like the preparation for that was weeks in the planning.
Wow.
You know, weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's down to the point of. Remember, they said, okay, so they're going to arrive. Who's going to greet someone? Who's shaking hands, and then they walk 2 steps, and then we need to. Then they're going to decide that they're going to get in the elevator. They're going to walk up the stairs. So you're planning literally every footstep that person's going to take at that time that they're there, you know. And kind of similarly, I think events is all about being prepared and planning like that. And if you kind of have figured it all out beforehand, then you just need to execute it.
Yeah.
You know, and the better planned out it is, almost the smoother the event's going to be. Unless, of course, it's like a big crazy party, you know. You maybe don't want it all planned out like that, but... kind of knowing where everyone's going, you know, all the moving parts, putting them in the right place. Yeah.
Wow. And of course, you know, you worked over in Beverly Hills. What would you say, you know, kind of looking at, you know, hospitality in the UK versus kind of hospitality over in America? How would you say those two different sides of luxury hospitality compare? And yes.
Yeah, they're definitely different. Before I went out there, I did think to myself, you know, how different can it be? A hotel is a hotel, right? Like people check in, they check out, they have eggs for breakfast.
Yeah.
Like it's all the same thing, right? And I think I was right to go out there with that kind of mentality, but it is different.
Okay.
It's quite different in lots of different ways. Probably the most significant one is the people, and a lot of the things that center around the people working there. So they have very different employment law and employment contracts and things like that there. You know, probably most notably, everyone there is largely, except for management, is largely working on an hourly basis.
Okay.
So imagine if your whole hotel was all like a casual workforce. You know, that's kind of the likening I would give it.
Okay.
So not really salaried colleagues. And then you've got things like healthcare that, you know, that the hotel is paying for people. You know, so there's a lot of kind of differences like that.
Okay.
But ultimately hospitality is the same thing, you know. It's I was very fortunate there to work in LA, and, you know, of course that's Hollywood and the land of starlets and everything like that. So we would have the workforce there were incredibly charismatic towards delivering hospitality.
Okay.
Because a lot of them were maybe actors or not, or, you know, I'll long remember the guy that used to work in the evening shift for in-room dining that was the answered the phone. Because he was a voice actor.
I see.
He was a voice actor during the day, and then in the evening time he would come to the hotel and do that job. And you could spend half an hour on the phone talking to him, you know, like just this voice that you just kind of fell in love with as soon as he started speaking. You know, and after he'd be like, would you like another dessert? Yes, I definitely want to have the dessert, you know, like amazing, you know. So yeah, it was a brilliant experience going out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, now focusing on a bit more of Hotel Café Royal. I mean, so when it originally opened, it wasn't a hotel. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. It's basically had kind of 3 life cycles, if you will, 3 iterations of its life. Started out as a restaurant, which became very popular, and, you know, obviously because of that location, it became very popular with creatives, you know, so whether that's writers or playwrights or actors or actresses, or it became a hub because there's so many theaters, I guess, around there. It became a hub for the creative minds, and yeah, I suppose in a way it started out being a place to be seen in London.
Yeah.
And it got so notorious that I think it then grew into being a venue. So it got so popular with, it extended into a room above called the Domino Room, which effectively then kind of became like a function room, where, I think in the evenings they played dominoes and smoked cigars and that kind of thing. But it also was the start of it becoming a bigger kind of catering business, a bigger venue. And then that part of Regent Street got redeveloped in the 1920s. And as part of that redevelopment, Café Royal kind of then became a venue, 21 function rooms.
Wow.
Gosh, up to, I think the biggest one could sit 700. So the second part of its life then, it went on to be the home for many, many organizations where they hosted events. So like the National Sporting Club hosted all their events there. The rules of boxing famously were created there, and boxing's home is kind of seen as being a Café Royal. And it hosted all sorts of events and things like that. And then maybe by the time 2008 rolled around, its best days had probably been behind it, and the current owners bought it and closed it down and brought in Sir David Chipperfield to redevelop Café Royal along with the building next door to it. And turned it into what you see today. Wow. So, it's in its third life.
Wow. And would you say, has its character changed, would you say, since it kind of originally opened to what it is today?
To what it is today? Yeah, I mean, I actually never had the opportunity to go and see it before it was a hotel. Okay. But I'd say, yes, it has. It probably has and it hasn't. We're very fortunate that we've got historic parts to the hotel. So the grill is the original Café Royal. That is the restaurant where it all started. So you can go there today and have this kind of nostalgic experience, dining where it feels like it hasn't changed in 100 years. We deliberately are trying to do that there. Okay. Yet then when you go upstairs, David Chipperfield is kind of the godfather of contemporary modernism, and so the rooms feel very modern upstairs. And we definitely attract like a younger audience because we're probably that bit younger, or certainly have that more modern style to us. So you get a bit of both, really.
Yeah, and would you say for anybody that hasn't been to Hotel Café Royal, which I'm sure a lot of people have because it's wonderful. But what can the hotel offer new potential guests? Either visiting or staying. What can it?
Yeah. For me, one of the things that struck me the most when I started working there was the location. I think hotels and hoteliers and probably the travel community at large think, oh, is it Mayfair? Is it Knightsbridge? And this is neither, but arguably it has a better location.
Yeah.
And I've really come to appreciate how brilliant that location is because, one street away is Savile Row. So you're literally, you're in Mayfair already. 2 streets away is Bond Street. Behind the hotel, then you have Soho, which I think the Crown and a lot of the development that's gone on in Soho in the last kind of 10 years has really changed what Soho is. It's not what it once was. It has a much cooler, edgier, modern vibe to it. I was telling someone there the other day, a street behind the hotel in Soho, Louis Vuitton just did a pop-up store there.
Wow.
Like who would have thought that, right? On a street that once had all these shops on it that, you wouldn't have gone into. So it's definitely a cool place where not just for retail, but also restaurants, bars. It's got a real kind of vibe to it in there. So there's an awful lot on your doorstep and you can walk to it all. It's a very, very walkable location. And having said that, you can kind of walk down Regent St. James and then you're in this huge green space, right? You're in St. James's Park all of a sudden,
Yeah.
So it's a very, very versatile location. So that's probably the first thing I would say. Secondly, maybe the team. Absolutely incredible team there. Any guest that I ever talk about, all they talk about is how amazing the team is and how well looked after they are.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to have inherited that team and to have added some of the new people that have joined us too, you know. So yeah, that's what some of the good bones of what make a good hotel, you know.
Yeah. Well, I remember, you know, my kind of one of the first times going there thinking, you know, I walked in and it's almost like walking into a kind of a magical fairy tale setting. And then, you know, you go upstairs and I was on this beautiful kind of terrace balcony area. And I remember just like looking kind of out, and it was across Regent Street. And I thought, wow, you know, it really felt so magical and so special to be there. So, you know, would you say you, obviously, you know, going to work each morning, but do you still feel that kind of same kind of special feeling going into work each day, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That terrace that you're talking about is kind of at the end of the Pompadour room. And, you know, I often kind of reflect like that sometimes just about the architecture there. Like, wow, it's, you know, that is the epitome of kind of London architecture, you know, John Nash designed, and to have built that curve like that, you know, and this balcony that overlooks all of that, you know, is pretty significant. So I guess to answer your question, there's things that kind of come and catch me by surprise a little bit. You know,
Okay.
I've worked there a year now, but I only come to appreciate things the more time that I spend there, and kind of think like, gosh, wow, why did they do that like that? You know, or how did they do that like that? You know, such a long time ago. Yeah, it's a special building.
Yeah.
You know, and I often reflect as well about the restaurant. You know, many restaurants come and go. A lot of restaurants kind of notoriously don't last a year or a few years. And, you know, for one to last 160 years,
Wow.
you know, there's something special about that room.
Yeah.
There's some, you know, the conversations that I've had, the number of people that have been there, like, it's kind of seen it all. Yeah, it's a special spot, and you can feel it.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. And, you know, of course, even just in the entrance, there's this chandelier that's, I mean, I don't know how many meters long it is, but it must take a very long time to clean.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, stunning. And, you know, are there any other kind of things around the hotel that, you know, really kind of have that special uniqueness or kind of special pieces around the hotel?
Yeah, I mean, it's littered with them.
Okay.
You know, there is, originally the hotel was well, when it was Café Royal originally, it was founded by a French couple.
Okay.
So when you look up now over Regent Street, the main Regent Street entrance, it's got French flags in stained glass.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
which overlook this royal street, Regent Street, you know, the Regent's Street. You know, who would have thought you're going to have like, and it has all the you know, égalité, fraternité, it's all written in stained glass, you know, like, what incredible kind of artistry that's gone into creating something like that. And the connection of the French heritage of Café Royal. And yeah, there's things all over the hotel that kind of capture me like that. We put a number of historical pieces from Café Royal in kind of museum boxes around the guest floors. You know, and that varies from music that's been recorded there to boxing paraphernalia that was used in boxing matches there. And yeah, it's fascinating history.
And, you know, Hotel Café Royal it's really become the place to kind of see and to be seen. And I'm sure, you know, you must have had so many kind of famous and, you know, these rich and celebrities, you know, all walk through the doors. You know, what's kind of some of the, you know, the stories or perhaps some of the guests that you've had, you know, walk through the doors there?
Yeah, it's got a long history of a notable history, I guess, especially like through those different phases and different ages. You know, Oscar Wilde, quite famous. I mean, he's kind of got association with so many places across London. Every pub, I feel like, has probably got some kind of Oscar Wilde story. But quite famously, it was, I'll probably get some of this history slightly incorrect, but so the rules of boxing were created at Café Royal by the Marquis of Queensberry. Wow. So hence the Queensberry rules. And it was his son, I believe, that was the partner of Oscar Wilde. So it was the Marquis of Queensberry who kind of got the police onto Oscar Wilde and he was famously arrested there.
Okay.
So that's where it actually
Wow.
happened. So he has this long history with Cafe Royal, and probably spent many a day and evening enjoying himself there. But yeah, fast forward many years later, David Bowie, quite historically, retired his alter ego Ziggy Stardust at a concert, I think at the Hammersmith Apollo one night, kind of totally out of the blue. Nobody expected this. And then all back to Cafe Royal for this big kind of party, which, was obviously very star-studded and all a bit last minute, I think. But that definitely stands long in the history of Cafe Royal. But yeah, there's many more, I think. A lot of stories. Yeah.
So what would you say it is about Hotel Cafe Royal that draws all these people to it? For years and years, it's been the place where they all go. What is it? Perhaps it's is it architecture or that kind of just that special feeling? What is it that brings all the rich and famous through its doors again and again?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a bit of if someone's gone before, and it's maybe you feel connection, or maybe a famous person feels connection to someone who's gone before them that they admire.
Okay.
I think there's probably a piece of that. And like you said, it's been a part of the fabric of society of London for 160 years. That doesn't ever disappear. So it's we very much kind of believe and live that of today as well, and try and host events and try and partner with people that are going to do likewise things, so that we can write today's history, and in 100 years' time they'll say, "Oh, that's where whoever died or stayed," or in a similar kind of vein. Yeah.
And Hotel Cafe Royal once was known to have the best cellar in the world. Is what I've heard.
Yeah. It did have that reputation.
Absolutely. I'm sure there was some incredible vintages kind of in there. If you had to, I don't know, pick one of those vintages and share it with one of the, celebrity guests, who would you say?
Yeah, wow,
perhaps?
gosh. What would I pick? So we do still have some of that original cellar remaining.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Some of those bottles still are there today. I think there's like a DRC 1960, something like this. I saw it's like POA on the wine list, That would definitely be one to open.
Okay.
With who? Gosh, I don't know. Often think, what would it be like to sit and talk with someone like Nelson Mandela? What an amazing person the world had there, and that'd be probably a good person to open a bottle of wine with.
And of course, with this 2 Michelin key restaurant, I mean, that's incredible. Perhaps you could tell us about its vision and kind of the influences it has on the food. And do you have a favourite dish yourself?
Yeah. I mean, Alex Stilling there. So it's Alex Stilling at Hotel Cafe Royal. Alex and I actually have known each other for many years because he was the head chef with Hélène de Rose at the Connaught when I was at the Connaught. So it just kind of shows what a small industry we actually work in, particularly in London. You will cross paths with people on multiple occasions. I've come to appreciate kind of after many decades in it now. So I've known Alex for a very long time, let alone is he an amazing cook. He's an amazing guy as well. And, rather interestingly, the other day, I learned that I think in the last year they've had 0 turnover. So like there's not many hotels or restaurants can probably claim something like that, and that's, I think, down to how they're treated. But, his food is from who he's worked with and who he's kind of learned from. It's predominantly that kind of French classic gastronomic thing. So 2 Michelin stars. But, he uses, or he certainly explores ingredients in the chicken. They found this chicken, gone to the ends of the earth to find this incredible chicken, and so which is his hunter chicken dish, which looks incredible, tastes incredible. That would be the one I would order if I was going there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just kind of looking at your your own achievements. I mean, you've recently been named one of the top 50 business leaders by the Boutique Hotelier Power List, which is, so inspiring and amazing. So did you ever expect to get where you are today? And do you have any advice for perhaps those listeners who are at the beginning of their careers thinking, I'm really inspired, I would love to kind of just follow in those footsteps?
Yeah, absolutely. So did I ever think I'd get here? Yeah, I suppose I did. Kind of aim high and why not? Like aim high and try and get there, right? And advice, I would say, stick with it. It takes time to get to this level.
Mm-hmm.
I probably spent the best part of 20 years. Trying to learn my craft to get to become a general manager of a hotel. It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
Like I said, I started washing dishes and worked across many, many departments in the hotel. So I feel like I know how a hotel runs and all the detail about it and every role that everyone does to deliver what a hotel does. Stick with it would be my advice, Aim high and stick with it, and you'll get there. Yeah.
And separately to working in all these different hotels, you've done charity runs, you've done hosting events, kind of interviews and podcasts. How important is it that we have these role models and that we are active in the industry as well?
Yeah. Look, I'm a big believer in giving back. I've spent, like I said, all this time kind of getting to this point in my career. If there's an opportunity for me to try and give back in any way that I can, absolutely. And I try and do that in a number of different ways. Okay. So we support the Gold Service Scholarship. We host some of the rounds of the competition, and we'll continue to do that. What a brilliant recognition that is for people in our industry. We also support like the Institute of Hospitality. We do their Restaurant Manager of the Year awards. And kind of something a bit more closer to me is the college that I went to, Shannon College. You try and support that college with students on placement and hosting some events and things like that for them too. I often think if I can make it better for the people that are coming through the industry now, or certainly help in any kind of way, why not do that? Why wouldn't you do that? It's yeah.
So what would you say it kind of takes to be a successful GM of either luxury 5-star hotel or restaurant or property? What does it take to kind of to do that role and to do it really well?
Yeah. It's interesting, I think if you'd asked that question to people maybe 20 years ago, I think they'd give you a different answer to what I would maybe say today. It used to be about the guest and, looking after guests and getting to know guests and treating guests and saying hello to guests and everything like that. And I think that is still very important, but a lot less than it used to be. It's much more now about being commercially minded. Mm-hmm. Where are we selling ourselves? Where are we marketing ourselves? Are we revenue managing? Like I often think that, and I was telling my revenue director just the other day, I remember working at the Cadogan Hotel, must have been like at the turn of like 2002, something like that. Okay. And I said to her, I remember one day the general manager at the time, he said, we're appointing this new position. We're like, oh, okay, what is it? We're going to have a revenue manager. We all thought, what's a revenue manager? What does that do? Whereas now that's like an integral part of any hotel across the world.
Wow.
So it's changed. There's a much more commercial mindedness, and on the other side of that, a financial mindedness. You've got to be astute in how you run these businesses. So I think having a positive outlook and a positive mindset, and being kind of commercially oriented and financially oriented would be what I think is needed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you have any kind of daily habits of your own that kind of ensures that, you know, you're always at the top of your game and you're giving work your best, and to kind of, you know, if it's going to the gym or getting involved in different activities, you know, what would you say that's...
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things I do at work that are like daily routine like that. You know, I make a point of walking certain routes in the hotel to try and see as many of both guests and the team that I can, and stopping and taking time to say hello and shake hands with people. I learned that many years ago from a previous GM. The power of shaking someone's hand is actually something I would recommend everyone to do, right? It's there's something about it that's connecting. So I do that. There's then a series of things that I think every hotelier probably looks at, right? Things that you're going to look at, you know, data, information. You're going to look at what happened last night when I wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
What, you know, something happened in the hotel. Literally wake up in the morning, start reading these reports, literally in bed. You know, yeah, but you know, you want to know, right? If something happened, you want to know straight away. And then there's probably a series of like commercial things that we look at, revenue reports and things that are like, what booked yesterday? What happened yesterday? What's happening for the next few months? You know, and how's that outlook changing and that kind of thing. So yeah, but outside of that, I have two young children, so I spend a lot of time helping at home. So I used to do an awful lot of running and cycling and things like that, which I find brilliant for kind of clearing your head. And so I try and do that when I can, but it's a little bit harder with little ones at the moment. So
any future hoteliers?
Let's see. Gosh. My daughter constantly, she's about to turn 4. She constantly says, "Can we go to Daddy's hotel? He has ice cream there." Someday, yes.
And you know, if you could go back in time to, you know, right back to kind of day one of your career, when, you know, but having the knowledge that you have now, would you have done anything different? You know, would you have taken a different path, or kind of any advice to your younger self? I
definitely wouldn't have poured the stock down the drain, for sure. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Any advice I'd give myself? Gosh, I don't think so. You know, I was very fortunate to have learned from the best, you know, learned from some incredible people. And sometimes you maybe think like you want to do something a certain way, and then someone will tell you that don't do it like that. You know, that's you know, I often think that, you know, it's such a, like I was saying there earlier, it's such a small industry. Everyone kind of knows each other, or, you know, that thought of like you're 2 people away from someone or 3 people away. Absolutely you are in hospitality, you know, so don't ever like burn your bridges, or don't ever like leave on a bad note, or, you know, because that, you know, that'll kind of come back around, you know. But yeah, I've been very fortunate to learn from great people, you know.
And one final question before we go on to the fire round questions. And so for anyone listening today, perhaps thinking about, you know, joining Hotel Café Royal, either as a brand new employee or starting their career there, do you have any advice on kind of what would make an exceptional applicant at your hotel?
Yeah, I think hospitality has probably changed a little bit, whereas it used to be very much about where you worked and what was on your CV and the hotels you worked in. And it's probably less like that now. I would say it's about attitude, mindset, come in and be positive, come in and be, you know, share the good things you've done, share the things you're happiest about, you're proudest about, share when times were hard, how you overcame those, you know, attitude. You know, it's we're in hospitality. So, you know, it's an industry that is about being hospitable and looking after other people, right? So show those attributes in an interview is what I would say. Do that, and you know, that for me is almost more valuable than what your CV says.
Yeah, of course.
You know.
Amazing. So for series 2, we're starting this new thing where each guest is bringing in a very special item that's played a special part in their career, from either a book to a menu or a photograph, something that they get to talk about. And so, Eugene, what was your
what did
item
I bring?
you brought in today?
I've got it here. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to find this, and eventually did. But yeah, so this is a card that we created during a taste of Noma at Claridge's. So during the Olympics, I was working at Claridge's at the time. So back in 2012, which feels like yesterday, but actually is 12, 13 years ago now. We knew that we were going to be what was called at the time a delegate hotel. So we knew we were going to host all of these different delegations, and it meant that our ballroom and event rooms weren't going to be needed. So we knew that in advance, and we thought, okay, what are we going to do with our ballroom? And we said, why don't we create a restaurant in there? Why don't we do like a pop-up restaurant? And this was at the age of like pop-ups had just started. I know Pierre Kaufman had just done one at Selfridges on the rooftop there with new inventors. And we were like, quick, let's go and find out what he did and how he did that and learn from him. And this was so very early on, we did this and we came up with some ideas and we were like, who should we talk to? Who should do this? And I remember sitting in a meeting one day and we said, listen, what are we doing? Let's aim for the top. Let's ask like the best restaurant in the world. What can they do but say no? And then if they say no, let's go to the second best restaurant in the world, We went to the best restaurant in the world and we said, listen, would you be interested in doing this? And they said, maybe. They said, would you pay us to do it? And we said, well, if we make some money, we can maybe come to some kind of agreement. And they were like, well, we really need a new oven. Would you and a new thing? Would you pay for some of the kitchen repairs in the kitchen? We were like, okay, let's do it. Lo and behold, a few months later, we did a pop up, a 12-day pop up. I think 10 days or 12 days it was. With Noma, we brought 6 or 7 of their chefs over. They worked with us and the team, and we did this kind of crazy 180 people for lunch and dinner every day for 10 days. And it was just incredible. And this was something we created. This wasn't the menu. This is actually something we created as a giveaway for every guest, which was kind of a map that we had gotten created, painted of the UK and of where these ingredients and things had come from. And then on the back was kind of a list of all of where the ingredients and everything had been sourced from and who by and everything like that. And couldn't be possible without the support and dedication of these valued partners. And René Redzepi said, we have left Noma behind in Denmark, but brought to Claridge's our inspiration and commitment. And we're looking forward to exploring the bounty of the British larder.
There we go. Wow.
Very interesting.
Wonderful. No? Very, very nice. Amazing. So I'll just hold that up for anyone that fantastic. So we'll just move on to some quick fire round questions before we close up for today. So number one, so if you could host an event for perhaps any person, an event or dinner for anyone throughout history or alive today, who would you host?
Gosh, I don't know. Be interesting to host. Wouldn't it be interesting to host like Oasis right now? And you see they're just back in London there the other day, and my God,
that would be very.
Wouldn't it just like hear from them? The horse's mouth. What's it like? What's it like being back together? And what's it like being on stage? And just the atmosphere they seem to be creating. Yeah. Like, wow, we just had this Oasis store, like their merchandise store behind the hotel there on Carnaby Street. The incredible, probably the busiest shop I'd say in London. Thousands of people queuing to get in to buy a T-shirt that says Oasis on it. Phenomenal.
Fantastic. And perhaps could you share your funniest moment working in the industry? So, or favourite moment if you can't think of one.
Yeah. I mean, I shared the moment about the Queen there. That was definitely like a funny one. Matt Damon bumping into the Queen. But one that I often kind of remember, because I think a lot about, you want to be an expert in your field, right? You want to be good at what you do. And I will never forget at the door at Claridge's one day. I was stood out there with Roman, and Roman was the head doorman at Claridge's for, I think when he retired, he had done 55 years, maybe 50 odd years working at Claridge's. You can imagine what he saw and who he met at the door of that hotel. But I'll never forget standing out there one day. And Roman was, I think it was maybe another doorman, but I stood with Roman and we were waiting for this VIP to arrive. And this, car pulls up and this family get out. And so Roman goes over to do the arrival. It's not who I was waiting for.
Okay.
He goes over and this family get out and they're like, "Oh, Roman, how are you?" And he's, "How you doing? Gosh, the kids are growing up. They're like sprouts." And let's get the bags in. So great to see you. Welcome back. Come on, let's go inside. Get inside. We'll see you when you're here. You come out and chat to me, but let's get inside, get checked in and everything. So, see this guy, 50 years of experience doing an arrival. And you're just like, here is a master at his craft, So they all went inside and he came back over and stood beside me and said, "Gosh, Roman, like, wow, who was that?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "I've no idea." It's like, just turn it on. When you need to turn it on, turn it on.
Oh my God.
Brilliant.
Yeah, wonderful. And finally, what would you say, lastly, is the best thing about our industry? I mean, we've... it's such an incredible industry and you get the opportunity to, meet people, travel, this and that. What would you say is the number one best thing about this industry?
Yeah, this is a super easy one for me to answer. It's because we make people happy. That's what our job is.
Yeah.
Whether you're working in the kitchen, in a hotel, you're working behind the front desk, you're working in housekeeping, wherever you're working in a hotel. Hotels are hospitality, and hospitality is about making people happy. Yeah. We all have that one core job, right? Make someone happy, whether they're checking in, whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Make them happy. Some people choose jobs. They're a fireman, and they wake up every day and they've got to put their life on the line, run into a burning building. We chose hospitality. Yeah. We took a nice path here. Yes. We just got to make people smile. And do that, and people will love you for it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Gosh. Oh, Eugene, honestly, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing, all these amazing stories and your knowledge as well. It's been, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Amazing.
Thank you for hosting me. Pleasure to come on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of today's episode, where we interviewed Eugene Leonard from Hotel Café Royal. Stay with us as we continue to interview some of the most inspirational and influential professionals. We'll see you soon.